Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being covered in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined today by Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, Arts and Features Editor, and Mark McKenna, Contributing Photographer at the North Coast Journal. Welcome, guys.
How you doing?
How's it going?
Pretty good. Today's going to be some highs and some lows. We just had this weekend the Kinetic sculpture race, which we're going to be covering. And then, of course, we're going to be covering current events, so a little bit of lows. But let's start out with the positive. And why don't you tell us, Jen, do you want to kick off first and tell us what's on the cover of the North Coast Journal?
Yeah.
And we'll transition to Mark.
So this week on the actual cover, you're going to see a photo of K-Ham, the ham radio, a giant silver ham that rolled through Humboldt this weekend during the Kinetic sculpture race, the Kinetic Grand Championship, which is back after a 2-year hiatus. And after 2 years of break from chasing every giant shoe, praying mantis, and 10-piece bicycle contraption through sand and sea, Mark McKenna came back out into the into everything, the plaza, the dunes,
the
hills,
rain, the sun, the wind,
all of it to shoot Kinetic one more time. And I'm hoping he can tell us about the grueling business that is just following these man-powered machines, human-powered machines.
Yeah, so they call it the triathlon of the art world, and it is. It's like at some point they'll figure out how to go land, sea, and air, but for right now it's like land, mud, and sea. But it's grueling to cover. This year was the first year that the radio station it was actually KRFH, which was students. So HSU students were handling the live coverage with Cliff Berkowitz, and I also teach at HSU, so I was like trying to photograph students and trying to cover this. So just me having to work out logistics, it's like my own miniature triathlon. And again, it was like raining almost on and off. The first day was really challenging because you're trying to like have an umbrella, but it's also very crowded, and so it's like it's a lot of work just to cover it. But I do want to give a shout out this year, just logistically between the different stops and the weather. There's one thing that really keeps this race going, and that's just this insane army of volunteers. And I always try to photograph them, and I have very few photos of them this year. So just want to give them their shout out. The ground pounders, the timekeepers, the ham radio operators, not officially with K-Ham, because that was a sculpture. But the one thing I'd like to say about K-Ham, though, is I don't know if you know this, but they had a tiny little transmitter, and they were rocking 87.7. So if you were half a block away, you could like pick up their hamtastic broadcast.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
What was your favorite sculpture, or are you afraid to say?
What's funny is my photo studio in Old Town is next to a business, and that person is on the K-Ham team. And we were discussing this yesterday in our back parking lot very loudly. I'm probably annoying the neighbors, but there was a sculpture this year called Florida Glory. And these fools went above and beyond. They had like spectacular mullets. They all talked like this. I'm not kidding you. They sound like Daytona Everglades. And they did not break character. And my favorite thing is they were drinking like basically jungle juice out of a gas can at like every pit stop. So we should have a photo of that. I'll make sure that we can put that up. I may or may not have fueled up with them at a couple of the stops. That's hard to say, but they did camp next to me. So my Monday morning was a little rough. I think them gators got me.
So, Mark, for folks who don't know and are listening now, tell us a little bit about the fact that you said, well, it takes place over 3 days in multiple locations. You mentioned camping. Tell us a little bit about the experience of moving around to get the right shots during this process, during the event.
Yeah, so it's a matter of timing, because you kind of have two things. You have the people that are racing hard for time, and then you have the people that are racing for fun. They say racing, not acing. They're just in it to kind of win the glory and not necessarily win the race. So you have to kind of pick and choose. And this year it was one of the teams was so fast, I barely got to the Arcata Community Center. I didn't even have my cameras out. I was talking to a friend on the street, and I'm like, here comes the first sculpture. Like, where the hell did they come from? And so it is a matter of trying to time it just right. The last couple of years, this year it was raining, so I didn't do it. But the last couple of years before we took the hiatus from COVID, I actually would take a motorcycle on the course so I could get up and down really quickly. And I had done it on a bicycle before, but I am too old and out of shape to like actually do that anymore. But so you have to kind of get to the stop. So everything starts at the plaza on the first day, and then the big drama is at Dead Man's Drop, which is a very steep, treacherous dune near the Manila Community Center. Oh. So they put in at the Manila Community Center, and they kind of come out by Samoa Bridge, and they have to go over the sand dunes, and that's really strenuous because depending on the conditions of the sand, the machines can get stuck. And then, of course, they end up at Halverson Park the first day. They go past the Carson Mansion on the way to the finish line, so you can get these great shots there. I missed that this year because I was trying to fight off the rain and dry all my cameras out and download photos, so I didn't actually get any of them in front of the mansion this year. And then the next day is the water crossing, and it's kind of the longest day, I think, mile-wise. They go across the bay, they either put in at the Wharfinger, and they get out at Samoa, depending on the tide, or vice versa. This year it was at the Wharfinger building, then they got out at Samoa, and then they ride all the way to Crab Park in Lolita. So if you haven't been out there, it's like you go all the way out like you're going to Cannibal Island, all the way out to like the mouth of the river there. So that's like there's a big camp there, and that's kind of like the mini Burning Man of it. There's like just a whole festival vibe. People are camped out. That's where their camps get judged. So there's people that are making like elaborate food and like smoking a half a goat or whatever, and trying to like win the best campsite award. But I will say there is probably some debauchery. I don't know. I may or may not have taken some Jello shots out of a giant syringe from Live Wrong, pardon me, the team Live Wrong, who was one of the faster racers this year. But yeah, there was some free floating. People had brought some propane, so one of the sculptures actually was shooting fire, and they brought some larger torches, so they were shooting some fireballs in the air. But other than that, it was mellow.
So mellow, relatively, I guess, is what you mean compared to past years.
Yeah, I can't say.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the campsite get judged. There's lots of different awards to go around. Can you tell us a little bit about that aspect of it and kind of what stood out to you?
Oh, there's of course the coveted one is the grand champion, and that's the one that kind of scores overall. But there's also a lot of like weird quirky awards, and so one of the awards that K-Ham won was the sculpture's favorite sculpture, right? So like the race teams all picked their other favorite race team, and so they won that award. There's awards for engineering, so you can have just the technically coolest machine, like we have all these special gears and differentials and pit crew. There's kind of like there's art, pageantry, and engineering are like the three big, like the triathlon part of it awards. And then there's like the mediocre award, and that's the people that come in like in the exact middle, like they have like the middle points. But yeah, it's such a list. Like even just trying to think of it, it's like without having that list in front of me, it gets hard to remember because there's quite a few awards.
It's like 26, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And some of the 26, and some of them are broken down to first, second, and third.
Oh, a lot of them are, yeah. Some of them, like the mediocre award, is just the one because it's just the people in the middle. But the art, the pageantry, and the time, those are all first, second, and third place awards. So it's as complicated, and from what I hear this year, it was as long as like an Academy Awards ceremony. So
it totally makes sense. So one of the awards that I think I remember reading was the grand capsizes. So that's crossing the bay.
Yeah, so there's like the golden flipper.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so you can get there's one for flipping at Dead Man's Drop, and there's one for flipping in the bay. And I missed anybody flipping in the water this year. So, well, I did see somebody at the Eel River, because you also crossed the river at Eel River on the last day before the finish. And the grand champions actually got stuck on one of the bridge pylons and flipped. And we were able to upright it and maintain their ace somehow and get across the river. But yeah, they came out fast, they came out strong, and then the wind got them and the current got them, and it just pushed them up against this pylon, and they flipped over, but they were able to get out and make it and be the grand champions this year. So that was like the one real like dramatic moment I had this year. Everything else was really smooth sailing for the most part.
Right on. Well, you said smooth sailing, but you did describe the weather presented challenges to you. Was this unique? Is it is it new to you? Or are you like a seasoned vet? You know how to handle it.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm from Humboldt County, so like saying like I'm not prepared for the weather, I'd be like really bad at my job. But yeah, we watch the weather pretty closely. A photojournalist, especially because we have expensive stuff that doesn't like water. So for me, it was like I have a giant sports umbrella, but when you're in a huge crowd, you're just like, it's kind of a jerk move to like block the view of like 18 people just so I can stay dry. But also sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So.
And not to keep grilling you or anything, but this is fun. Speaking of grilling, what was you said there's festivities. Some people might roast a goat or whatever. For folks who are thinking about going in the future, or participating in the future, like what's the camp scene like? You described it almost like Burning Man.
It's like we jokingly call it a mini Burning Man.
Yeah.
There is no fire, like Burning Man, but also the Crab Park is actually a closed event, so it's like racers and support group. It's not open to the public. It is kind of a smaller area, and it is part of a wildlife preserve, so they try to minimize the impact out there. But yeah, you have to have a special wristband to get past the gatekeepers.
There's just not enough goat for everyone.
Yeah, there is not enough goat for everyone.
Well, that's too bad. But you were there. You got it. You got the special media pass.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think of all the advice I've heard from people who go and watch the races, it's usually like wear sunblock, bring bug spray for the dunes. The bugs at the dunes are apparently terrible. How were they this year?
Man-eating mosquitoes. Yeah. So there's man-eating clams in the bay. Because of the rain, there was not a lot of, I didn't notice a lot of mosquito activity at Dead Man's Drop, but I was there while it was drizzling most of the time, so that minimizes it. But from what I heard, people that were there when it was not raining, I had a friend that said the DEET wasn't even working, and I mean that's just like straight bug poison. And they were like, I was covered in DEET and I still got bit, and I'm like, oh man, that sucks. So
that's bad.
Yeah, it was pretty. I guess it was pretty thick. But again, the rain kind of mitigated that for me, and I was there during the rainiest part. And it did clear out. I was like on my way out, and I'm like, now it clears up. But I guess I kind of dodged a mosquito bullet, so to speak.
Well, nobody wants to get eaten alive. Yep. So, Mark, this was really awesome to speak with you about your experiences. Thank you so much. Do you have any last parting thoughts about your experience?
Well, it was a pretty glorious experience this year. Again, it was there had been a couple year hiatus. But I think all in all, it went really, really smooth. There were a bunch of first-time racers. There was kind of like the Kinetic Museum shut down, and some folks got a hold of sculptures, and some other folks were tired out. So there were a lot of new racers this year that they were in it to win it, and they did the best they could. They all did really well, and I've already talked to a few of those teams. Some are friends of mine that are considering they're going to do it again next year, and they've already got plans to make things better. I personally am trying to find a sculpture. I'm kind of getting tired of like just being a spectator. I have a whole crazy idea for a sculpture that may or may not involve fabricating some stuff with Photoshop. But that's to be announced.
Let me order you that GoPro now.
Oh yeah, there will be many GoPros.
And Jen, can you just share with people how they can access some of Mark's photos that don't make the print edition?
Yeah, I mean, just a tiny sliver are in the print edition that's on stands now, but you can go to northcoastjournal.com and hopefully I will have uploaded the ton that I'm planning on uploading. And, but peeking at Mark's Instagram at, what is it again?
It's, what is it? Mark_photog. I can't remember.
What? I'll tag him in our Instagram. But yeah. Usually he has a lot up there, and also
I was waiting for the print edition to come out, so I got to do a dump today. Like that's what I'm doing when I get done with this. There will be piles of photos.
But northcoastjournal.com, you'll be able to see plenty there.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Mark.
All right.
Jen, what is going on the arts and features beat this week?
Well, first, I want to make sure to point everybody to a couple of really great reviews we have. We're lucky to have 2 plays going right now. And if you see this or hear this before Saturday, there's a show at Del Arte that is in from the, I believe it's the Zimbabwe Academy of Theater, and it's Zendesi, and it's, according to Pat Fitton, it's fantastic and very moving and intense, and just with 2 players on the stage with only a bucket as a prop.
Whoa. That sounds
It's
kind of
still
cool.
Arte.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's showing is the Rocky Horror Show is in Ferndale. So, put on your fishnets and head down there. Tigger Bouncer Custodio has a review in this week that is almost as bawdy as the show. So you should definitely check that out too.
Right on. Yeah, that sounds cool. I think I've been down there before, but never for Rocky Horror. So that sounds like worthwhile.
Yeah, there's nothing like watching like a bunch of dudes in drag and ladies in colorful wigs and Frankenstein gear that just wandering up and down the Victorian village streets.
Very cool. We watched it recently, my peer group, the film, but yeah, nothing like in person. So I think encourage people to go have fun with that.
Yeah, and it is interactive. So, wear something that might get wet. And
Nice.
yeah.
Well, cool. What else you got going on this week for us to discuss?
On a definitely less light note, we have, you should definitely check out, we have a couple of pieces about the Brett Watson situation. One is an editorial and calling for his resignation. And the other one is a views piece from Linda Stansberry, which I think is really poignant and kind of talking about what a lot of people have experienced, particularly women, in terms of inappropriate relationships in the office. Definitely worth your time to read. I myself have a views piece in this week that is, again, about serious stuff. The title of the piece is "It Might Be Time to Get Totally Unhinged." And
Damn.
the reason that I am going deep into the swear jar on this is because the Uvalde school shooting, on top of Buffalo, on top of the church shooting, on top of everything since Sandy Hook and before, everything since Columbine, looking at shootings and gun violence in this country over and over and over again, and sometimes pleading rationally, sometimes making arguments. I feel like we are at a point where we have tried everything, everything civil, and I'm 110% done being civil. And so that's what I mean by getting unhinged. It was hard after seeing so many studies, so many comparisons with other countries, and so many other, so much clear data telling us that the vast proliferation of military level weaponry amid an untrained populace, amid, the general population, the idea that that's good, that that's keeping us safer, is just bananas. And it seems like no matter how much arguing, how much logic, how much data you have, it's always like, well, this is evil and Uvalde strong and whatever, with no real desire on the part of the GOP for one and the gun lobby for another to actually make it safer for citizens in America, for residents, for people who live here, children, families. It is astounding to me that we have decided to embrace guns harder than we embrace our children and our families. And I don't see what I'm saving all my swear words for. So, I had an experience recently. I went to a really lovely luncheon with a bunch of women, and two of them had lived through wartime. And one of them told me about being in Japan and coming out of hiding and just seeing bodies everywhere. And she was a little girl, and she said that, what could you do? She said, I couldn't cry, nothing can be done. And then this other woman who was sitting next to me, who was very lovely, told me about hiding under bodies that the Khmer Rouge had just murdered in front of her, and how she had to stay still for hours and then climb through the bodies to get out. And that is the Khmer Rouge. That is a world war. And that is what we are doing to our children now. that little girl in Texas who had to smear herself with her classmates' blood to survive, to hide. This is what we're putting our children through. We're putting them through war. So we need to start acting like this is war. And after seeing in the last 2 years how people absolutely throwing toddler fits everywhere from theaters to diners to post offices, throwing an absolute toddler fit because they have to wear a 2 millimeter paper mask over their face, and seeing how airlines, governments, and health departments have yielded to that fit throwing in a way that a parent would never, I feel like it's time for that. So I am ready to get totally unhinged and just throw down. I am ready to make everything uncomfortable all the time, because apparently that's what we listen to. We don't listen to data. We don't listen to, tragedy. What we listen to is whoever screams the loudest at a school board meeting. And it has been absolutely gutting to watch. And I have reached my limit on civility and the limits of what civility will get us. So if you are a government official, sees me in a restaurant, know that I will come and hassle you. There is no more civility left in me. Enjoy your privacy in an airport while you have it. There's nowhere where I'm not going to have an uncomfortable conversation about guns, and particularly about AR-15 style weapons that are an insane thing for your average person to have. And I have zero patience left. And I think a lot of people have zero patience left for people who want to act like an AR-15 is the same thing as a hunting rifle or a target shooting pistol. That having a single handgun is the same thing as having, something with a bump stock. So I think that all of this conversation, all of this debate, it's all important and it's good. And having, arguments and having, supportive data and studies about gun violence are crucial. But I don't think anymore that they're the thing that is going to make our kids any safer. I think that until we are ready to sacrifice some of our dignity and sacrifice some of the norms that have already gone out the window, we're just going to keep, we're going to have to keep identifying the destroyed bodies of our babies in elementary schools. And that's, I see no other change on the forecast. So we haven't tried this before. So I am not advocating violence. I'm advocating being a complete in public whenever and wherever you can to push the agenda of sensible gun laws and sensible gun control.
Thank you for sharing your heartfelt insights on this. And I do want to ask a follow-up. Firstly, you mentioned, hey, for folks who are offended by my language here, like tough, like this is where we're getting. So we'll have to keep it real brief. But what do you say to folks who say, hey, why are you politicizing this? Like, what's the response to that critique?
We are in wartime. It's political. And the laws of our land are politics. They are set by politics. They are changed by politics. So I see no other way around it than to be political. The same thing with the swearing. I'm sorry if swearing upsets you. I guess you don't have cable. And also, in the face of seeing kids shot to the point where they're unidentifiable, I cannot see how me dropping an F-bomb in print is really going to throw you. And as far as, people saying, oh, kids pick up the newspaper. Yeah. I say read it. I'm fine with my kids reading everything that I've said in there, partly because it's all true. Telling no lies.
Well, thank you so much. I do encourage people to pick it up, check it out, and it's provocative, but also very insightful. So thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Mark, Jen, that's about all the time we have this week. Thank you both. We went from the highs to the lows, but I think this was a great journey. Thank you both. Until next time, North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up, stay informed. Also available 24/7 online, so you can check them out anytime. Until next time, everybody, hopefully you'll tune back in with us again next week. Take care. Bye.